Welcome to Ask Psych Sessions, where we ask some of the best teachers we know questions from you, our audience. If you would like to submit a question, please go to bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. That's bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. All lowercase, all one word. And here's our next question.
Thanks for joining us today. In our latest episode of Ask Psych Sessions, I'm talking with Dr. Asia McLeary-Gaddy, who is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at McGovern Medical School at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston, Texas. Thanks for joining us today, Asia.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we talk about your role in your work and how it might be helpful for teachers of psychology and other courses, can you just tell us a little bit about your own psychology background?
Yes. So I attended Rice University here in Houston, Texas for undergraduate, and I majored in psychology, worked in some of the undergrad labs, and that's when I fell in love with social psychology specifically. And during my undergraduate career, I was part of the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellowship, which put me on the path to get my doctorate and have summer research opportunities and things of that nature. And so I was accepted at the University of Vermont for my graduate career, and I received my master's and PhD there in experimental social psychology. And if you know anything about social psychology, it's focused on the implications and what we can give to the world from our research. And I really, really liked that.
So then did you go straight into this sort of work, or did you have an academic path, some teaching experience?
I did. So obviously, when I got into graduate school, I just knew I wanted to be a faculty member. I wanted to start my own lab. I wanted to do my own research. But I would say maybe after my first year, beginning of my second year, I was like, this isn't for me. I enjoyed teaching, but there were a few things that bothered me. You know, I'm like working so hard to publish in this journal that most of the communities that I studied had no access to. So I could find this brilliant finding, but it never reached the community that needed it most. And then, of course, everyone knows publishing is not easy at all. And so I was a bit frustrated with the path. I wanted something that was more hands-on. I have all of this research and knowledge from these experiments, and I want the communities who need it most to actually benefit from it. And so over the summers, I would adjunct some classes because I enjoyed teaching, but I also looked into more applied jobs. So I received an internship at the Vermont Department of Health under the epidemiologist. And we focused on the social determinants of health. And one social determinant of health is discrimination. Discrimination affects your health. And I knew this very well because that was the type of research that I was doing in my social psych department. And so seeing the overlap of how my degree can be applied into other aspects was very, very, very intriguing to me. And I also knew somebody at the University of Vermont Medical School. It's called Larner Medical School. Their diversity and inclusion department, they had a bunch of data that they had collected. However, they didn't do anything with the data to see if it was helping their underrepresented students, the climate of their medical school. And so I had a skill set that would enable them to do something with that data and help their students, their faculty, and curriculum. And so I began talking with them and doing some work with them. And so between my experience with the Vermont Department of Health and my experience with the diversity office at Larner Medical School, I was like, these are the things that I want to do. It was specifically catered to the community. And that's what I liked.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love to hear about people's different paths and experiences. So would you say that now in your role, you're getting to do some of this work? Maybe you can just give kind of a 1 to 2 minute version for the listeners. Like, what do you do in your role at the medical school as the diversity and inclusion officer?
So as a director of diversity and inclusion, we do a lot from faculty to students, even to curriculum. And so it includes all aspects of my doctoral work and my psychology. So one, you have teaching. And so oftentimes I give workshops on implicit bias, microaggressions, how to measure the climate of your department, whether that's surgery or internal medicine, things of that nature. What seems so commonplace for us as psychologists is very much new information for the more applied fields, such as medicine. And so I found my niche in that respect. In regards to just data and numbers, in regards to underrepresented students, how are they feeling? How can we measure how they are feeling? How can we measure the climate of the students, of the classroom, things of that nature? And so thinking about it from a theoretical perspective, and so using the different psychology theories to provide some type of framework for us to design our interventions around has been extremely helpful as well. As medicine moves forward, they're very much about the data and seeing if things work. And that's what an experimenter does, right? We come up with a theory, or we have a theory, we base our hypotheses around these theories, we collect data, and we come up with some results and then implications. It's the same thing for any other job, or specifically, I should say my job in diversity inclusion. We have a problem that's usually diversity related. I look at the base data, come up with a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, collect some more data, and bring some implications or some recommendations as to how we can make this better. Then we submit an intervention and see if that intervention actually made it better.
So for those of us that are in classrooms predominantly, and maybe we even work at institutions that don't have someone like you to sort of help us, do you have maybe just like your sort of top 3 tips about what faculty should be, I'll say should be doing in order to make sure that their, classrooms are an inclusive space, or are there, really quick ways you should realize that this isn't a good climate? I guess maybe some take homes. If you could control the way faculty approached issues of diversity and inclusion, what would kind of be your top things?
I see, well, it could just be medical students, but I think it's the same for undergraduate students. Students as a whole are very honest. And so whether it's midway through your semester or at the end of the semester, I would create some type of survey. It doesn't have to be long, to ask how the students feel. And first of all, do they like the class? How do they feel in the class? And then what would be their recommendations to improve the class? And then also that very famous box at the end of, is there anything else you would like us to know? The students use that box so well, and it is such a great wealth of information because it's qualitative, right? So they're telling you about that one experience in that class that really stuck with them, whether that be good or that be bad. And so again, that's your baseline of data of, okay, did they like this lesson? This lesson stood out the most. They didn't like this lesson. What they really want to see is more of this. And so, and again, with a diversity focus. So whether that's identity things, whether that's theoretical things, because it's a psychology class, whether that's just reading more articles from Black psychologists or underrepresented psychologists as a whole, that's something that matters to students, but sometimes we overlook it as professors. And so listen to what they want and then implement it. Once you implement it, measure it again to see, okay, they did notice that I made that change and they're grateful for it. Now, what else can I do? I think that's one good takeaway. 2, as faculty members, we always have to stay on top of our game. And so workshops, online lessons through LinkedIn, to just be knowledgeable about how the landscape is changing and what matters to students, using pronouns, introducing your name and your pronoun. These things are where that's where the time is going. And so just having, I spoke with a student, and just me introducing myself and saying my pronouns was just an indicator to them that, okay, I'm open to have conversations with her because she's at least a bit knowledgeable about the things that matter to me. And so I would also suggest that. So where am I at? Sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm nervous. We have
2, right? So do some training, talk to your students.
Right.
Those are good big ones.
And then I think those are my two big takeaways. I don't have a third right now. Talk to your students, and not only talk with them, because I think they get irritated when you talk to them, they give you your feedback and you don't implement change. So talk and actually make the change. And then you as a person, as a faculty member with power, do your own work to stay on top of what are the trends and what are the things I should be looking for and how can I be critical of myself? Because there's nothing worse of like having a great idea, but implementing it terribly.
Yes. And I think that sometimes maybe that's where like a hesitation to act, right?
Correct.
If I don't say anything, at least I won't mess up. Although, silence is also in some ways suggesting that things aren't important. So I think that is, would you recommend the faculty also be sort of transparent? Say, invite feedback, say, this is a change I'm making to my course. Please let me know if it seems like there's a different way to make it.
For sure.
Well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea.
But I also think that last point is really important. It would be worse to say that you care and then not do anything to show you care.
Correct. There's no sense of having all this data if you're not going to do anything with it. Because after a while, this feels like you're studying me for your own benefit, but you're not trying to actually help me. And again, that ties into why I didn't want to become a professor, go the professor route, because it's like I'm studying these communities, but I'm not giving the information to them so that they can help themselves.
That's a great way to sort of end things, right? I like that, right? Make sure whatever you're doing isn't for you and for you to, feel better at night. I've checked my D&I box, but that you're actually closing the loop and using it to make positive changes.
Yes.
But first, doing some learning, doing some training. So Asia, that's really helpful. A good 3-pronged approach. Talk to your students, do some learning, take some courses, stay up to date, and then actually make some changes.
Yes.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for chatting with us today, and I wish you much success in your role.
Thank you so much.